today because there's so much about how we help parents with children who are neurodiverse, who struggle with regulation, and whose parents really don't have a sense of community because their
Yeah.
struggles don't match what others in their peer group are reporting. So I wanted to open
Yeah.
it up with a question about how do you begin to help parents make sense of and manage the stresses of being the parent of a neurodivergent child?
Well, yeah, it's a big problem because it's so isolating and it's so our care is so fragmented and you're exhausted from running from one practitioner to the next, and half the time you don't know who's right or who's wrong or if you're getting the right information. Um, so the way that the neurorelational framework works with the body of work that I've co-authored and authored is first, let's find out how your child's nervous system impacts your nervous system. Let's look at you as a parent who has a nervous system who's being imploded as well by the dysregulation. And let's figure out, is there a way that we can, if we can do what I call a parallel process, which not everybody has the bandwidth to do, but if we can start to look at how are we going to help your child? What does your child need in terms of co-regulation? But what do you need in terms of co-regulation? And can we come up with your own trigger toolkit menu for you? And some of it isn't just all about self-regulation, right? We have a lot in our psychological world right now about self-care and trauma-informed care. That's really about self-care. But what about relational care? What are the relationships and the relational health that you have? Do you have a network? Are you isolated? Can you support each other? Or are you oftentimes couples come and they're just at odds with each other because the whole relationship has been thrown into a polarizing, you're too quote unquote accommodating, or someone blaming the other, you're too discipline focused. And so now the couple is in complete disarray and sometimes on the brink of divorce. And so really then how do we help heal that teeter-totter of being polarized, and how do you start to develop a support system so that you aren't alone? And where do you go to find resources? So some communities will have like parent support groups, or you can find, thought leaders, emerging thought leaders, like yourself and others that are part of different movements like the pathologic demand avoidant movement that have support groups. But it's so important to find some connection so that you are not alone. And ultimately, self-care needs to be relational care and being able to find joy in your life.
So sometimes I'll get the question, or I'll be working with a family, and the child's behaviors are triggers for the parent. And
Correct.
they are just so getting ready for the school morning, and the kid screeches and it floods your nervous system. And all you want to do is shut it down, escape, scream, something. The kid has to go to school. You have another kid. You need to get out of the door. So, those more in the moment kinds of things are the things that come to me. Oh, stop. Sorry, those are the kinds of things that come to me in the office in where parents are in the crux of that moment. And I'm wondering what you offer in terms of addressing that, other than validating it, right? Other than acknowledging that this is demanding, this is difficult, this is overwhelming. And repair is the most important thing you can do to revisit it on the reflection side. So that's where I go with it, but I'm wondering where you go with it.
So yeah, where I go with it is, like I said, just as we're trying to build an individualized, tailored trigger toolkit menu for the child, what is it that you need as a parent? And how does that also translate into modeling for your child what you need to do? So does that mean that your nervous system is so imploded? Are you open to wearing your own noise canceling headset? So on a sensory level, you create some protection for yourself.
Mhm.
And I have some parents who fight it and fight it and fight it. And then eventually they go, yeah, I need to not only do this for myself, my kid needs to wear it. So we're both going to wear it. We're both going to go to an event that's overstimulating. So how do you start to create a way to help buffer your nervous system feeling so activated by the screeching? And you know that that's just part of the protest for the morning routine, that they're going to do that because you're demanding something of them that is taxing them, and their anxiety is going to go up and you're going to get the screech. How do you protect yourself from that? And so what do you need? Do you need to put your AirPods in your ear, or a set to listen to your music? Do you need to model I'm going to go to the car and wait for you? And they're old enough to do that. So you get out of the chaos of it and you wait for them to finish getting ready. Is it that you pass the baton to your partner and say, I got to take my own time out. I'm going to let you help them get to the car. Is it that you decide that you're going to be late for school? Because what's more important is that you get out in one piece without getting into any kind of altercation that could be damaging, like physical violence, because you're trying to force something to happen. So there's body needs. How do you take care of your body? Did you get your coffee before the morning started? Did you get up early enough to get some food in you? On a sensory level, how are you going to protect yourself from those insults? On an emotional level, who do you have to co-regulate you? And how can you also support yourself in preparing? This is going to happen. It doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. What are the internal mantras that you tell yourself? And on a executive level, have you set off enough time for this transition to happen? So we use body, sensory, emotional, and executive planning toolkits for ourselves and for our parents.
So, to that, and I call it the best, right? So, body, emotion, sensation, and thinking to capture that executive functioning piece. And clearly, we prioritize the regulation, the bottom up things, right? The sleep, the nutrition, the coffee, the arousal, right? And the sensory things. I think what gets muddled for people sometimes is when the demand is too much, when I'm asking more from my child, whether they are suffering, whether this is an appropriate demand, and then I feel guilty and I want to rescue, or I want to lower the demand because, I just want to get up in the morning. Or the other side, I'm not making enough of a demand. I'm pampering them. They're never going to be able to survive in the world where nobody's going to accommodate or cater to them like this. How do you respond to those kinds of concerns?
Well, this is where really understanding your child's nervous system with someone who's a has nervous system expertise is really critical, because one can over demand and one can under expect. And either way, you can get caught in a polarity, like I was mentioning, with couples that start battling and they're playing out this war between, you need to ask for more demands. No, we need to lower the demands. And so, in my perspective, it depends on the severity and the duration of the nervous systems. Is this child on the verge of collapse? Have they collapsed? Is their nervous system been under so much threat and distress for so long that you really do need to lower the demands for a period of time? And that can be very scary, but I always say, if we need to start here, we're not going to end here. but we may need to start here. Now, that's depending on the severity. What's the frequency, the duration, the intensity of that nervous system stress responses? How long have they been, as the whole family, been without sleep and without some basic core capacities to regulate?
Mhm.
Is this child unable to literally live with these demands because they are too great? Those have to be carefully thought of. At the same time, what often I find a little bit challenging with the PDA movement is that um, lowering demands to build safety and to build trust doesn't mean that we never have stress challenge.
Mhm.
And so I find that sometimes the communities go into either all safety or all threat, and they're in an all or nothing pendulum swing. And what I think is really important is that we understand that our nervous systems need safety, and we need to be able to build stress tolerance through stress challenge. And then we need to identify what is threat and work on remediating or reducing the threats or finding what those culprits are so we can get more nervous system help or build more resilience through sensory, needing sensory integration therapy or needing some visual spatial therapy or some particular types of remediation. But stress challenge then is, what's the right dose of stress challenge?
Mhm.
How do I help carve out stress challenge in a way that helps my child be successful so they can start to build a sense of pride and
Yeah.
resilience that they didn't like it. It was hard, but we got through it. They got through it. And now they're on the other side. And now they feel really good about themselves.
Yeah.
And that then starts to change and turn the corner. But sometimes we have to go to a low demand period and then slowly build our way up. And I call that, using a chemistry term, titrating, just
Mhm.
getting the right titration of stress and the right dose of stress.
So, another thing that often comes up is this idea of consequences, contingency management, punishment, which, you and I have talked about as very much top down, but it's very much in the environment that, I would have gotten punished for that. They'll not like what happened, so they'll never do it again. So that becomes a pretty hard um, area for parents to revisit in a new way. And I'm wondering what you say about that, because there's often a lot of pressure from parents and grandparents and teachers and community members and friends and cousins and everybody else about, you're not being sturdy enough, you're not being giving enough consequences, why can't you control your kid?
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember there being a lot of shame that came my way in the early days when I have had a high risk, preemie twin baby boy who was born in distress and malnourished, spent a month in the neonatal intensive care unit and came home and was completely unsoothable. And that shame from friends and family really impacted me. I mean, I lost friendships over some of this where their, their advice when he was 2 or 3 was like, you just need to get the paddle out and just show him who's in charge.
Mm, yeah.
My own mother,